Let's look at this Tinubu reordering the balance of power against all odds. I think personally, I'm for this because we must balance most of those things that look not lopsided in Nigeria, particularly areas where the North have undue advantage over the South. I think I'm particularly in support of the Tinubu government in balancing most of all these things. Because we can clearly see that each time there's a move to do this, there's always a stiff resistance from the northern part of the country. To the point that even the former executive secretary of National Insurance Scheme was very vocal recently that Tinubu is annihilating the North and that it is a political suicide for him that he will not get a second term from the North. I want to say that if not for anything, when I saw the government of federal government establishing a military training base in the southern part of the country, Osogbo to be precise, I must say that it came to me with excitement. With excitement because ever before now, we seldom see anything that questions the authority of the North in monopolizing most of all these things. So for me, it's a welcome development. So it doesn't matter the threat of the Yusuf himself. Of course, that is the former National Secretary of National Insurance Health Insurance Scheme. Equally, another man that is a serious advocate and critic of such move is Dr. Garos Galolo. I must say that we need to balance most of all these things. Because even in the recent time, we're actually seeing the one that has to do with, of course, breaking Nigerian Aviation College into 6 geopolitical zones. I actually say it's a welcome development. Because at the time, we saw the move of federal government to give each and every region a sense of belonging. A situation where the federal government intend to ensure that such such aviation college is established in each of the 6 geopolitical zones. For me, it's a welcome development. It is irrespective of the opinion of anybody. That is the area personally I support the federal government, and I want to see more of this because there are so many areas where they unduly have advantage over the South. And if you look at all these things, they only came through the military rule because the North was privileged to occupy governance almost all the period we were under military rule. That is why even when the government tinkered with the idea of moving some department or CBN to Lagos State, I saw it as a welcome development because it will enhance efficiency, and of course, that is the commercial hub of the country where their services are better needed. So each time we see such anything of that nature, we quickly see stiff resistance from the North. I must say, in this area, I support the government because we need to balance most of all these things. Even recently, what we only saw, of course, the approach of government, federal government, to balance when it comes to revenue sharing formula through tax reform base. We saw stiff opposition from the North, a situation where even some close ally of the president, like the governor of Borno State, Babagala Zulum, was very vocal that the North was against the federal government position sequel to the tax reform base. And as we have it, the North ultimately used their number in National Assembly to expunge all the areas they felt were repugnant to their interests. And what was the whole essence? The whole essence of federal government was to ensure that area that produce, area that consume, get adequately compensated through revenue sharing. And that way, it will encourage other regions, other states to look inward and bring more to the table. Because the more you bring, the more you earn. But unfortunately, they not use their number in National Assembly to expunge every area that they felt were repugnant to their interest. But the question is, how do they even get that advantage of their number in the North, in the National Assembly? They equally got it through undue advantage conferred to them by the then military governments who govern the country, or rather who rule the country under military rule. You understand that the likes of Abacha, the likes of IBB, the likes of Gowon took turn to rule the country under military rule, and they divided the country into regions, states, as we have it currently. That best explain the reason. If you go to Kano State currently, you have 44 local governments. If you go to Jigawa State, you have 27 local governments. And Jigawa State is carved out of Kano State. So put together, you are talking of 71 local governments. Whereas a place like Lagos is having about 25 local governments, Delta about 25, even Edo 18. So you begin to wonder if revenue is shared according to local government. It means a place like Jigawa State is having revenue more than places where, of course, revenue is derived. And as we have it, I have a first-hand experience with what transpired in Jigawa State during the youth service. A situation where in their local government system, the local government chairman, I mean to say, the local government staff do not come to work. They only wait at the end of every month when the allocation will come. When the allocation comes, they come, they share the money, everybody disperse. We are meant to understand then that the local government chairman in that particular local government where I serve stays in Kano State. So it becomes a monthly ritual. When the allocation comes, they converge, they share the money, everybody disperse. So the question is, if anybody rise to question the sharing formula that gives them that money they are collecting without doing anything, they will receive with their last blood. And that is where I support this government, that we need proper reform in some of these areas. We actually need proper reform because you cannot be eating where you do not sow. In as much as we agree that the federal government money comes from all the areas of federal government revenue source to the national, at the end of the day it's being shared, but let area that produce, area that consume get adequate compensation, just as it was contained in the initial tax reform bill. So I want to believe that the president and the presidential committee on the tax reform bills should make a further amendment to that bill to encompass all these areas that will adequately and appropriately compensate areas that produce and areas that consume. For me, it's a welcome development, because it doesn't matter the complaint of the northern stakeholders. We must balance both of all these. We are going to think of it. How can you explain the situation where Southeast is having 5 states as against 6 that is in every other geographical zone? So for me, that is pure marginalization. That's why it becomes difficult to even question people when they agitate for sovereign states, because everywhere they look is marginalization. To people who even question the current government in terms of lopsided appointments, we cannot forget in a hurry how Buhari's government was emphatic that those who gave him 5% vote will get 5% attention. And he was specifically referring to the Igbos, the eastern part of the country. And that he did in all his 8 years. You can imagine a situation where in his time, out of 17 positions, when you talk about security positions, talking about from the Office of National Security Advisor, the Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, Director of DSS, Director General of Custom, DG of course, it's about 17 when it lists all the 70 positions. Under Muhammad Buhari, they not took about 14 or 13 or so, leaving just about 3 or 4 for the whole southern part of the country. And today you can have someone like Yusuf Usman shouting and alienating the North. And it was surprising that under Muhammad Buhari, we did not hear his voice. Though he now claimed that he spoke under Muhammad Buhari. But the question is, why was his voice too low if I thought he spoke, that nobody noticed it? Because today, he has become a serious advocate of the North. You can hear his hear him speak almost every moment. For me, the North should expect that we need to balance most of those imbalance that exist in the system. Because a quick look at how Buhari managed the country under his watch quickly revealed that Buhari's government spent a whopping sum of 1.96 billion US dollar, and this is equivalent to 2.9 trillion naira, to construct a rail project from Kano to the Nigeria Republic. We begin to wonder, begin to ask, of what economic value is this project to Nigerian economy? What is Nigeria economy bringing to Nigerian table in terms of trade and investment? So the Niger, I'm not saying that our African brothers anyway, but they are like a parasite to Nigerian economy. So for me, that project was not necessary, as far as I'm concerned, because it was a waste of scarce resources. The resources that is domiciled in the south, you appropriate it at will and spend a whopping sum of 1.9 billion US dollar to construct a rail project that have no economic value to Nigeria. If we will take attention to our, of course, refineries, we know that we have 4 refineries that is even moribund now. But it's even surprising to know that Buhari's government spent a whopping sum of 19 billion US dollar. This is equivalent to 29 trillion naira to repair the refineries in his 8 years. Whereas a Dangote refinery costs 20 billion US dollar. And Dangote refinery is the largest refinery of that kind in the world. Single train refinery. Now, you got to show that the money the government wasted in trying to fill refineries is equivalent to what a Dangote used in building that refinery. What a monumental waste. And somebody will complain about how the country is being managed. And under Muhammadu Buhari, nobody cough, nobody question all those spending that could not be proven how the money went. I must say that a time will come, the government need to ask questions. Because when you're talking about 19 billion US dollar, is a huge amount. So the question is, where did the money go? And unfortunately, Buhari is not around to answer questions as to how the money was spent. Let us even go and probe the area of where means. We understand that where means is a window through which the federal government borrows money from CBN to address shortfalls in, of course, in the budgetary provision. But under Muhammadu Buhari, the 8 years, the Buhari government borrowed 30 trillion naira through ways and means. And as you have it, all effort was succeeded to probe that borrowing have been meeting brick wall. We need to wonder, begin to ask, how was the money spent? And you could understand that in all of this borrowing, the government of Muhammadu Buhari, of course, ended up breaching the law, establishing that borrowing through that window. Because the law says, if you borrow for a particular year, and you have not paid what you borrow, that you are not eligible to borrow in the preceding year. And that you must not borrow beyond 5% of your annual earning. And in all of this, that government breached all the laws regarding that. I must say that this is impunity without missing words. And as we have it, Buhari is no more to answer questions regarding this. And somebody who refused to complain under Muhammadu Buhari is now complaining. But don't get it twisted. I'm not saying it's good to manage the economy. I'm not saying it's good for any section of the country to be annihilated, as alleged by Usman Yusuf. But the question is, why were they silent in all Buhari's 8 years of alienating the South? particularly in southeastern part of the country. Now, they have their voice. Let us just equally look at, of course, overseas medicals under Muhammadu Buhari. In just 1 year, Nigerians, this encompass both government officials and Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, spent a whopping sum of 3.6 billion US dollar, which is equivalent to 5.5 trillion naira in seeking medical attention abroad. And the reason I bring this angle is, if the government, though this does not limit to only Buhari's government, they have to do with all the governments that have all the people that have governed Nigeria since the inception of this national democracy, even extends to the time of military rule. Because if they address our healthcare system, I don't think Nigerians will be going abroad for medical tourism as we have it. So, for me, the North is not justified to start shouting, annihilating the North, marginalizing the North in the face of the current administration. Because under Muhammadu Buhari, they lost their voice. But I must say very thank you for that. This is Mr.